International Media TV. Television that listens to you.
We're doing things like trying to make sure that the University of California will allow Black and Latino kids to enter and that we're not shut out at the door. We're looking at the fact that often Black and Latino kids are disproportionately suspended and expelled and pushed out of school, and so we're trying to figure out how to make sure that doesn't happen. So I just want you to know that there's a saying that people have that once you kind of go up in the world, you need to send the elevator back down to bring some other folks back up. And I need to know, you need to know from my heart that there are a bunch of us sending the elevator back down. So I was very moved by what they had to say. Commissioners, so glad to see you. I don't know if you know you have a brilliant chair, Yale Law graduate, Susan Christian, brilliant woman. And I have long history with the Human Rights Commission. I started working with you all in 1983 when a misguided city attorney in San Francisco said we could not give a certain percentage of government contracts to people of color and women. The young man who was talking about coming from the projects made me think of this following bit of information. When the city had to give some of the subcontracts to people of color, there was a man who lived in the projects who bought a couple of trucks and was able to start a business and get out of the projects. And that's what race-conscious contracting is all about. But we have some very evil people who are trying to stop money, our tax money, going back to people of color, and the Human Rights Commission was in the forefront of trying to push through those measures so that money got to people of color and women. I come into the city now because we were pushed out because our rent was doubled, and when I'm driving around in San Francisco, I don't see any Black folks. And so this is more Black people than I've seen in all my visits to San Francisco, and it's like, oh, thank God there are Black people still in San Francisco, so thank you for enlightening me. I feel like my comments are going to be a little anticlimactic after what we just heard, but I want to tell you a little bit about how the Civil Rights Act of 1964 came about. There was a young man who was just talking about his living in Mobile, Alabama. A lot of this started in the South, where back in the day, we could not all be in this room together. There'd be a line down the room, and the Black folks would be here, Latinos, Asian Americans here, and the white folks here. We probably wouldn't even be in the room. We'd probably be in some basement with our ear to the door trying to listen to what was going on. To speak very plainly, it was about a notion of white supremacy. How many of you heard of the concept of white supremacy? That some white people think that they're superior to people of color. That was enshrined in the Constitution. Black people were 3/5 of a person. We couldn't vote. We were chattel slaves. So you had people organizing around the country to fight against this. Many of the people organizing were young people. They were your age. I don't know if you've seen the classic photographs of the young people being hosed by the fire hydrants in fire hoses, having police dogs set on them. But people said, we don't care if there's pain, we want our rights. And so a lot of the labor union people were very much behind this. A man named A. Philip Randolph, who you need to know about, he was with the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. That was a great, great, great job back in the day because we were kept out of jobs. And he wanted to organize Black people around the country to march on Washington. Now, President Roosevelt went, oh my God, we can't have Black people coming to Washington, so he issued an order saying that certain government contractors had to give jobs to Black people. Now keep in mind that before the Civil Rights Act of 1964, as a Black person, as a woman, you could go to apply for a job and they'd say, we don't hire Black people, and there would be nothing you could do about it. I remember, I'm a lot older than most of you, and my dad was in the Air Force, and we came back from Europe and came to Illinois, a northern state. Our housing on the base wasn't ready at the time, so there was a little motel outside of the base, and we went to stay there. There was a no vacancy sign. My parents got out of the car, went in to sign up, and they said there's no vacancies. Now our parents tried to shield us from pain, but we knew they did not want Black people there. So we had to go across, I don't know if you know Illinois and Missouri, we had to go across the river into the Black part of Missouri and stay in a Black hotel. So people said, we're sick of this. So the young people in Alabama were getting hosed, they were having dogs put on them. Ultimately, kids were blown up in churches in Birmingham. And so there was a March on Washington 51 years ago, the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. Once again, the president did not want black people to come into Washington marching. He thought we'd just be going all crazy. Apparently all the businesses were shut down. They had National Guard called out. But we were peaceful. 250,000 of us marched on Washington. You've probably seen those iconic pictures, Dr. King, the I Have a Dream speech. The next year, Barbara, hello. The next year, the Congress, there's a critical piece of information, and I don't want to lecture to you, but it's important for you to understand how strange history can be. John Kennedy was assassinated in November of 1963. He had put into the hopper a Civil Rights Act, but it wasn't getting any place. The Southerners controlled the Senate. The Southerners were just stone cold racist. They said things like, we can't have black people in the military, they're goons and animals. I mean, things like this were said by senators. And so the Republicans were more liberal at the time. My how things have changed. But President Kennedy could not get this through the Congress. He was assassinated, and Lyndon Baines Johnson from Texas decided that he would push through the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And apparently back in the day, all the senators used to drink all the time, so he would get people drunk and stuff and twist their arms, and finally got the majority that he needed to get this passed. It was signed on July 2nd of 1964. By this time, Robert Kennedy was the Attorney General of the United States, and Johnson said, I don't think I should sign this on July 2nd because black people will feel that they can go to any motel or hotel that they want to, and there'll just be chaos in the land. Black people will just be going everywhere. Robert Kennedy went, what? And so, Robert Kennedy said that, and then Lyndon Baines Johnson said, that's ridiculous, I'm signing the act. So things really changed very radically. I was going to say a lot more, but it doesn't feel like, I don't feel this, that it's the moment to lecture people. But I just want to tell you about a couple of ways that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was important. Rodney Williams is going to get an award later. He was one of the people who desegregated the San Francisco Police Department. We should give him a big round of applause. Now, I'm getting old. I said this is OG Day because I see a lot of OGs here who were back in the day. But my recollection is it was Officers for Justice who were the people who brought that case. And so the the police department was desegregated. In 1984, women were not allowed to apply to be firefighters. Women were not allowed to apply to be firefighters. There were no Asian American officers in the city of San Francisco because there are stereotypes about Asian Americans and leaders. Black men guerrilla sounds were made when they walked into the fire stations. The first black firefighter was a man named Earl Gage. And when you're a beginning firefighter, you take rotation for other people. So he would go in and take somebody's place at the firehouse and would sleep, for the night. So the first night he was there, he all of a sudden found himself on the floor because the other firefighters, these were unenlightened white people, told the person whose bed he was sleeping on that a black man's sleeping on your bed. So they flipped him out of the bed onto the floor. So from there on out, whenever he went to replace people, he had to take his own mattress, and he had to go by a cab to get his job done. So Title VII, which is the anti-employment discrimination part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, allowed us to sue the fire department. Ed Lee, who's the mayor, was part of the suit that he was suing the city. Now he'd be suing himself because he's the mayor. So whenever you get kind of mad at him, just remember he was fierce. He was fierce. He was doing the bump with one of our, some of you are too young to even know what the bump is. It's a dance. So Mayor Lee was down. He was really a good brother. So I had a lot more to say, but I don't want to say it because you want to get to the people who are getting the awards. But here's a couple last things I'll say. There were negative consequences of giving rights to black people. When Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, he turned to his press secretary and said, "We have just given the South to the Republican Party." Now remember, back in the day, the Democrats ruled the South, but they were just stone cold racist. So after that point, there was something called the Southern Strategy that was put in place by Spiro Agnew. They decided to make people afraid of primarily black people, and they decided that they would get the white Southerners to become Republicans. You can see that that has really sunk in deeply. In 1964, 3 civil rights workers, 2 white students and 1 black student, went to the South to register people to vote. Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney. They were murdered for registering people to vote. Let me say that to you again. They're just a little bit older than you are. They were murdered for registering people to vote. A few years later, Ronald Reagan went and announced his candidacy for presidency right near where they found the bodies and the car of these civil rights workers. Clear signal to the country: we don't like black people. The Republican Party, I'm sure there may be some Republicans in this room, I doubt it. But the whole idea was, we are the party that is going to protect you against black people. So you need to keep in mind that the Tea Party is kind of like this too. They're talking about taking back our country. Look at how the president is disrespected, I think in large part because he is an African American. You've never had somebody say you lie in Congress when the president is talking. Just crazy stuff. So all of this is an outgrowth and a continuation of white supremacy. Now, luckily in America, most white people are not racist anymore. We have made tremendous progress. But you have to look at the manifestations of racism in the current day. Who's in prisons? It's black folks and Latinos. Who's getting a poor education? Black folks and Latinos. Who's getting disproportionately suspended from schools? Black folks and Latinos, okay? So we need to have a new civil rights movement. Remember that the civil rights movement didn't start in Congress. The civil rights movement started on the streets. People were upset. They said, we're not going to take it anymore. Rodney and I are getting tired. We're tired. You know what I'm saying? Y'all have all this energy, so you need to figure out how to keep pushing. You need to make sure that we don't have so many black and brown people in prisons. We need to make sure that the LGBTQ community is treated fairly. The dominoes are falling throughout the country on marriage equality. We need to make sure there's no tension between communities of color and the LGBT community. There's all kinds of things we need to do, but you need to be brave and you need to take risks. Those of you who are young, though, need to study hard, do well in school. That young brother we talked about, he could run fast, but he could not run the 2.0 until he settled down. You need to be very serious. We are waiting for you. We're waiting to pass the baton to you. I want to speak once again from my heart so that you young people, if you ever feel alone, you have to know there are thousands, if not millions of us who care very deeply for you. You may never see us. I communicate with folks like this every day. We care about you. We know some things are messed up, but we'll do everything that we can to make your lives better. So this isn't exactly the speech that I prepared, but it's a speech that I think that I needed to give. We have wonderful officials now. These are people who do not need to be sued. We used to have to sue people. We don't have to anymore. That was not a veiled threat in any way, shape, or form. I know as soon as I say that, it's like, oh my God, no. The last thing I want to say is that my organization is having a celebration of the Civil Rights Act of '64 on September 13th at Yerba Buena Center. Marcus Shelby, incredible jazz bass player, Stephen Anthony Jones from the Lorraine Hansberry Theater, and Joanna Haygood from the Zacco Dance Company will be performing in an artistic way to let you know how important the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was. So I have some flyers and I'm going to pass them out. Thank you for having me. Usually I talk much longer, but that's not the vibe today. So thank you very much.